Swords are really cool, but they're not exactly easy to make, and, well, material doesn't grow on trees. Unless... Welcome to making a real fantasy sword out of wood. After making some drawings for design work, I settled on this one. I want it to have a big ol' crossguard, a big fuller down the center of the blade, and then I want to add some cool looking fantasy gems on it. To start off, I had to harvest some natural wood from a local wood tree. This board would eventually become the blade of the sword, and since it was a little gross and too thick, I had to plane it on down. Now for the wood for the crossguard, I'm going to be using this cool piece of oak that has this neat hole in the middle. While that hole is pretty ugly, I really like the grain around this knot in it, so I chopped it out, and I'm going to be using this for the crossguard of the sword. After sketching the basic shape, all I had to do is punch out that ugly part of the knot from it. And now that I had a nice blocky shape, I could cut out the slot that the tang is going to have to go through. I'm going to try to make a full tang for this sword so that it's all one good solid piece of wood, make a strong sword. So I had to make this nice square slot so that the eventual tang could slip right through it. Back to the blade of the sword, I'm going to be putting a really deep and big fuller across the length of the blade. And to do this, I got out my mallet and chisels and just started carving away. And oh boy, did this take a long time. This was a really big fuller, and it was going very deep into the sword because I wanted to take off a lot of weight as much as I could and give it a good cartoonish look. So I just kept carving, and I kept carving, and after a couple hours of this, I took a good look at it, and I was nowhere close to how deep I wanted to be. So I looked deep into my heart, and I realized that no great things come easy, and I got the inspiration to get out my electric router. And while some of you may call this cheating, there is a fine line between traditional craftsmanship and masochism. And I'm gonna walk that line. But with this power of technology, I think it came out pretty darn good. I thinned down a lot of the material, it's nice and straight, and yeah, it's got some character now. With that done, we can move on to the handle section or the tang, and after slapping that out, we have a good basis to start building everything else onto this sword. Unfortunately, when it came to slotting up this crossguard, I started to have some realizations. So, this will choke up all good and all, but I need to remove a bunch of material here so that this can actually slide up past this shoulder. And if I do that, it's gonna protrude into this and literally just cut that in half, and there's gonna be nothing holding it there. Long story short, I have a new idea. I'm gonna flip it upside down. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't do this before. I think this actually looks a lot better. The handle, it should flow better into, instead of having this weird janky spot with gaps. And yeah, that does mean I still have to do a little bit of cutting, but we're gonna leave all this, and all we have to cut is a little bit here and a little bit here so that this can snug right on up. So yeah, that's the plan now. Yeah, that wasn't gonna work, and you'll see why. Everything I just said, I take it back. After wandering around my barn for about half an hour trying to find a tool that can precisely cut a square only to a certain depth, I'm just gonna cut away parts of this, because if that's gone, this can just slide up like I want, instead of having a whole deal cutting this. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut the easy thing, because I take the easy way out because I'm a cheat and a fraud. Well, the crossguard goes on pretty well, but looks like I cut it a little bit too big, so there's air that you can see through it. So there's no avoiding it. I'm gonna have to hand carve in this again. So here we go. So I got out my hand carving set, and I realized that some things just need patience and hard work. I'm just kidding. Who do you think I am? I got out my electric carver and I started hacking away at the material. But this time it actually worked out. I'm getting better, guys. Trust me. With these new relief cuts on the crossguard, I could test up a little fit up of the crossguard onto the blade material of the sword, and it actually slid in easy peasy. It was good enough to be actually a press fit, and I think this really goes to show that taking the easy way out and being lazy is always the best move. And now that I knew that the crossguard fit, it's time to move down to the handle. This handle I'm going to be making out of walnut, and for this one I want to make it nice and smooth and symmetrical, so I'm going to be putting it on my lathe and lathing in the shape that I want. Once I had the basic shape of the handle lathed out, I could cut it in half, cut off the extra material, and then I could get to routering a channel in the middle that the tang could go through. Before I could get to testing if the handle actually fit well on the sword, I had to make sure this crossguard had all the available notches that it's going to have in the finished thing, and then I could actually test up, seeing if the handle fits on the sword. And by golly, it does. Despite knocking off half the handle onto the floor, it fits beautifully. And now that I know at least everything fits, I can chop off some extra material off this guard here, make it a little more angular, and then chop off the extra material on this handle. With the guard and handle fitting, we can move down the blade and get the pommel started on this sword. For this pommel, I'm using a bit more of that oak I used for the crossguard section. I have to put a little slot into it, and then I can put these two pieces together and it should slip over nicely over the tang. Now that all the pieces had the correct notches in it, I could glue together the two halves of both the pommel and then the two halves of the handle together. Unfortunately, my pommel is still just a big ugly block, so I have to chisel in a nice receiving end so that the handle can fit up nicely into this pommel. Now I wanted to be a little fancy with the handle on this one, so I wanted to add a little spiral to it. So I marked it out, I gave it a little bit of a groove with a hacksaw, and then I sanded and filed that nice groove in, so it has a cool, spirally, almost leather-wrapped look to it. It is now time for a quick crossguard update. So I thinned down the crossguard, so it's got a nice taper to it. And now I'm gonna carve in these little radius here. I'm trying to get for a kind of wing looking shape, so I should have some overlapping feather look to it. Yeah, so gonna sand those in and should come out pretty good. Now, since this is going to be a fantasy blade, I need giant gems that do absolutely nothing for a weapon. But unfortunately, a giant ruby 2 inches long might be a little expensive, so I'm using purple heart for this one. Now, these first two little gemmy shapes are going to go right on the blade of the sword. And it should look by the end that it's one big gem going through the sword. But I also want gems on the pommel, so I made two more little baby gems. And I will be sticking those right on this bottom pommel here. Now I just need to slap them into shape so they look a little bit more like a beveled gem instead of just a block of wood. And do the same with the bigger gems that'll go on the blade. With those gems done, that's every part of this sword made, and I can get to what I've been avoiding this whole time, which is putting a nice point on the actual blade itself. I've been avoiding this because I didn't want to take off all that supporting material and make it very flimsy in case I break it in the process, but with it cut, it's got a very nice pointy shape to it, and while it is a wood sword and I probably won't be fighting with it, what is a sword without an edge? So I used my table router and put an edge on, well, the edge. Alrighty, now that we have the main body of the blade, we can actually start adding everything to it. So, on this blade, we are going to have the cross guard. There we go. The handle. There we go. And then the pommel goes on top. Snug everything up. Voila. Oops. And after making sure you could hit a cool pose with it, I sketched my maker's mark onto the pommel, and for once, I set down the electric tools and I hand carved it in. Now that is called character development. With all the detail work done, I could get to gluing everything together, and also using every single clamp in my entirety of the barn. Now that it was one beautiful piece, I needed to make it even more beautiful. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some polyurethane. And there you have it. With it all assembled, glued, and a nice layer of finish put on it, that is a sword complete. I really like how it turned out, and despite being a crazy fantasy sword dimensions, it actually has a fairly good weight to it, and it's actually really fun to swing around. I'm really happy how it came out. The gems on it really pop like I wanted them to with that purple heart, and yeah, that is a wooden fantasy sword, and I'm really happy with it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to see more, and let's get on to the glamour shots. Thanks for watching. Comment what you want to see me make next, and I'll see you in the next one.